Alright, this is a crew management guide for a triple engine squid. Probably the most complex engine guide. So first off, you got the spanner mount chemspray main engine. Main engine, you want chemspray because you need chemspray on the balloon. You need to squeeze as much health out of this balloon as possible. And chemspray on the hull is also good. Even if your hull breaks, it'll have chemspray on it when it gets rebuilt. You can chemspray the engines. And when they don't have any damage on them, go ahead and chemspray them. But yeah, most of the time, yeah, just keep up chemstrays, especially on the hull and the balloon. Engines aren't as necessary. And so you saw me do the two types of engine jumps. There's two ways to repair these left side engines. The first way, you tap the top one, and then what we're gonna do is walk straight down there. Nothing special. We need a little bit of head start. That's not enough. This is plenty. So just go right down there. It's real simple, guys. You just walk parallel. And the second way is you tap the top engine and continue on to the bottom engine. Just like that, real easy. You see, yeah, it's, with a bit of practice, you'll get it. It's really not anything special. You just walk straight down there. This one is probably the most common engine jump. You'll be doing that all the time. Now, the main engine doesn't have to worry about the right side engine, the bottom right engine. They can help repair this one. They don't worry about that bottom right. That's the charge of the second engine, this wrench buff engine, or the span mount buff engine. So there's two engines you can have over here: a span mount buff, which I do, or a wrench buff, which is more traditional. I'll explain the differences between them a little bit later. But first off, so basically, yeah, when you spawn in, we'll explain the buffs in a second. But when you're shooting a gun, let's say, reload, you'll either be buffing your gun during your reload, or you're gonna be tapping your engines. Every reload. Buffing your gun, or tapping the engines. Here, let's fly off this rock for a second. So yeah, then let's talk about the front engine. Now, the front engine will either be your spanner mount buff, or a wrench buff extinguisher. I'll explain the differences in a second, but first off, when you first spawn in, buff cycles. The spanner mount, the front engine, buffs, when they first spawn in, buff the top engine. You can do this in any order. This is the order I do to buff the engines first. So buff top left, bottom left, then run to your balloon. At this point, both the engines are doing the same thing at the same time. So at this point, both the engines should be right at the balloon, and then run to your guns, load them up and pre-buff them. So there you go. You got all your engines buffed and the balloon buff. Now you only want one buff on each, so just get one buff on the engine. Then do the other engine, and yeah, and then after you pre-buff and load your gun, then you repeat it. You want as much buff time on these engines and balloon as possible, so you got plenty of buff time together. And span mount buff versus the wrench buff. So I bring span mount buff on the right side because these engines. You see, a gun has 200 health, an engine has 300 health. Now, a wrench repairs 120 health, so a wrench is enough on a gun. If your gun's at a quarter health, a wrench will bring it up to 175 health, let's say. If your engine has a quarter health, then your wrench will bring it up to what, like, I don't know, like 200 health, maybe 2/3, less than 2/3. So a mount repairs 250. A mount will almost fully repair these engines. So I have the spanner mount buff on the right side. The vulnerability to having spanner mount buff on the right side is fires. Now, it's quicker for the main engine to chemspray the right side gun than it is for them to chemspray the front gun. It takes a lot longer for them to chemspray the front gun. But your engines are a little bit vulnerable to fires, but we're not too worried about them. Fires have a 0.25 modifier against guns and engines, a 1.5 against balloon, and 0.8 against armor. So 0.25 against guns, 1.5, 0.8. So really, fires don't hurt these engines too much. They got plenty of health. You need to get fires off eventually, but we kill so fast with a buff grease gat and a buff grease banshee. We can kill so fast that those fires don't matter in the short term. They matter in the long term, but not the short term. And the main engine can chemspray this right side engine, but so really all you're worried about is that bottom right engine for fire vulnerability. So what I do is have the wrench buff extinguisher engine in front. The reason is, that gives you, wrench is plenty of this gun. Wrench is plenty to repair and, repair and rebuild this gun. It's not great on engines, but, so the wrench is plenty, and having the extinguisher gives you full autonomy on this, front. And, it also, the default position for the front engine is up here. They can, repair and buff these engines, repair and buff the balloon. And they also have a good position to run to the hole. Now, your weakest tool on the ship is this wrench on the front. And, the weakest component on the ship is the hole. This is the least important thing on the ship, besides your guns. The most important are the engines and the balloon. This just keeps you alive, that's it. And that's, well, this keeps you from... This protects your hull, that's all it does. Your engines and your balloon keep you alive. You need to rebuild your hull, but it's more important to have your engines and the balloon at full health. If you have a good pilot. Now, so a wrench takes 5 hits for the hull. A spanner takes 4. Which, the difference in time is less than that, because the wrench, you actually swing a wrench faster than you swing a spanner. So the actual real difference is less than 5, compared to 4. But yeah, it repairs slower, it rebuilds the hull slower, but you're more worried about the engines. You can have the spanner mount on the hull if you need to, and just, if you only have light damage on the engines of the balloon. But oftentimes you'll have more damage on the engines of the balloon than the hull. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the, okay, we'll go over stamina. So the main engine, for their stamina, they'll use their stamina if they need to run down to rebuild. They use the stamina every time you're going to rebuild something, anything broken, or to save the hull maybe, or to get a quick hamster in the balloon. The right side, oftentimes if the balloon goes down, and you're not shooting anything, then they'll run over to the balloon to help you build it. And whenever there's anything broken, the bottom engine's broken, they run to that. But yeah, typically, just use your stamina whenever you're running to something. Anything that's broken, anything that's going to die, you gotta try to save it. Or your guns. Run to your guns. If you're ready for combat, run to your guns. There we go. And then start shooting. Buff them. And, buff your guns when you reload. Whenever you reload, spend the whole reload buffing. Yeah, so that pretty much covers it. The only thing else is to know when to engage, when not to engage, which is really up to your pilot to call positions, to know, to see, well, can we do any damage right here, or, should we just, keep buffing up? You don't want to engage without top deck buffs. Bottom deck, engine buffs are, they're really good, but they're not necessary. These top engine buffs and the balloon buffs are required. They're practically required, and they're so useful. You should not engage without a buffed balloon and buffed engines. So I think we pretty much covered everything up here. That's the Squid. Everything else up to that is up to the pilot, and you're engaging. You don't want to get disabled too much, but yeah, that's the Squid. Have fun.